I got bullied all throughout my childhood, but my biggest bully was one of my teachers. And that seriously f***ed me up for life, man. So in today's video, you are gonna learn how getting bullied can actually help you become the Giga Chad version of yourself and how to healthily deal with that. Yo, it's Damo, and my purpose is to create these life lessons for a younger version of myself that really fucking needed it, and hopefully one day a generation of young men. So, without further ado, let's talk about getting bullied. I grew up my entire childhood and teenage life searching for more father figures because my dad worked 3-4 jobs, and although I'm so grateful for how fucking hardworking he was and all the lessons he taught me about discipline and being a great man, in our household dynamic, he was kind of my mom's. He would give himself away for her. He would always put other people over himself. And after the age of 12, I already thought that I was going to be like a better man than him. And as like egotistic as that is, it's tough to have a parental figure that you don't have as much trust in, or a parental figure that you resent on how they act towards certain things. So I gravitated toward these icons of masculinity. Arnold Schwarzenegger, David Goggins, fucking who else do I love? Oh, Ronnie Coleman. But beyond that, some of my biggest and closest father figures were the teachers at school. They were the coaches of my rugby team, teaching me about the importance of pain and suffering. They were my acting teachers, teaching me that being a man is about being confident in being vulnerable and being authentic. But it also came in the form, wait, I can't name him. What do I name this? Fuck it, I'll give him a nickname. Fuck this guy, bro. Wow, I'm trying to think of like a fake name to give him, so I don't get fucking screwed up if somebody watches and tells them, but I don't really care. If somebody from an old high school is watching this, or you're in the school right now, you'll probably know who it is. Let's call this guy Jack. I met Jack when I was 6 years old. He was in charge of the summer camps that my school would put on. And I remember that we quickly became best friends. We were both like the fat kids, even though he was a grown man and I was just like an obese 10-year-old. And we would bond over food, and he was a very funny guy, and we would joke all the time. And I remember I was so proud to be his friend. I was so proud that he liked me. And for some reason, he had like this boyish laughing attitude, but he was also like able to man up and control the students. And I was like, wow, this guy's incredible. And it was interesting because my dad was the head of a soccer academy. He was respected by every single student there. He was the best coach in my city. And this guy was kind of the same, where he was teaching sports and teaching this, but he was kind of opposite, where maybe he wasn't respected by all the kids, especially because of his weight. Fast forward into high school, and turns out he was one of the teachers there. Kind of look jacked, bro. Fuck. When I entered grade 8 rugby, we were best friends. I was 200 pounds at 5'3", and nobody could tackle me. He found it so funny and so entertaining that I would run 100 meters through the entire opposing team. I was very loud when I scored, and when I ran, I would always scream, and it was just like I would put on a show for everybody, and he loved it. But then came grade 9 rugby, and I lost a lot of weight, and everybody else somehow learned how to tackle. And now my lack of athletic ability was getting beat by all these kids who either put in more work or just weren't fucking scared to hit anybody. And before we get into the rest of the story, let me tell you that I am a pussy. I played rugby for 5 years. Everybody on my team knows this, even if they never said it. I was terrified of tackling. I couldn't tackle for shit. I was so scared. Like, I just had this image in my head of a knee going right into my face and blacking out. I was terrified of tackling. I'd love to hit kids and like grab the ball and like run into them, but I could never tackle to save my life. I remember one day, I was also unathletic as fuck. One day I twisted my ankle, and since he was the team's physio, anytime you're injured, you go to him, and I went to him, and I remember him taping up my ankle, and he pulled me in, and he said something along the lines of, "Why are you faking this injury?" And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Damien, I know you. You're the biggest drama queen on this team." He's like, "You're doing this for attention." And honestly, he was kind of right. It wasn't that bad. I have a pretty shitty pain tolerance, but I could have kept playing. And I went off to keep playing. But then every single time I saw him in the hallways, saw him in the locker room, our dynamic changed. I was terrified of this guy. I was so scared of what he thought of me. And the next time I get an injury, some fat guy lands on my knee and it buckles my knee in, and I go to him to get it taped up again. And I'm scared to get it taped up because what is he going to say this time? And I just remember him taping me and like, he's like, "Does it hurt?" I'm like, "No, does it hurt?" He just looked at me and he pulled my knee and just, "Does it hurt?" And I was like, "Oh my fuck yeah, it does." And he's like, good. He's like, just want to make sure that you're not faking it. And I remember one time I walked into the locker room and I was late. I had a huge problem with being late. Our rugby program was extremely hardcore. None of the coaches would take your shit for being late. And I walked in. I remember he walked right past me and he bumped into me a little bit. And he looked at me and was like, and at the time I was like the assistant captain of the team, so I had some responsibility, you know. And I remember my best friend Marcus like pulled me aside. I walked into the locker room after he just left and everyone was silent, all staring at me. I was like, what's going on? My best friend Marcus pulled me aside and he whispered in my ear. He's like, do you know what Jack just said about you? I'm like, no. He's like, he basically told the whole team that you're like not fit to be the captain, like you're kind of a pussy. And he didn't say that, but I remember feeling like a fucking little boy. I was like 14 or 15 at the time. I felt like I was 6 years old again, getting fucking traumatized by the childhood trauma all over again. Like I was defenseless. And I remember like every single day I was terrified to go to practice. I was terrified of him. I was so scared to be around him. And what hurt the most was to everybody else, he was their favorite. He was the funny teacher who got along with all the other teachers. He was like the school's punching bag. Like anytime at assemblies we were joking about anybody, it was always him. Anytime we were on our rugby tours, he was always the guy to get bullied. He was always the guy that got made fun of by the other teachers because he was pretty fat and he would eat a lot and like that was his shtick, you know? And everybody loved him. And I used to love him. But now I was just so scared of this guy. I would tell my friends about this and nobody would believe me. They're like, oh, what? Jack would never do that. He's so funny. He's so nice. Like, yeah, he might be a little bit of hard ass. I'm like, no. I see him talking shit about other kids. Like, how do you guys not notice this? And I remember he would make fun of the kids who didn't make the cut onto the team. He would pull aside my teammates and he'd be laughing with them at the other kids who didn't make the cut on the team. He'd pull aside some other students from other sports and he would laugh at the gay kids who would eat upstairs on the balcony because like everyone bullied them. This teacher, a guy who was supposed to be like a father figure, like respected by the students, he was supposed to keep us safe. He would act like he was part of the class. He would act like he was in high school, which is probably why everybody loved him. And I remember I got to a point where I was so scared and I was so embarrassed. And I think it's because I knew that a part of it was he was right. I was kind of a pussy. I was a drama queen. I did love acting. I wasn't that man that he wanted me to be or that I wanted to be. That I ran to my favorite acting teacher. Like his name is Robert Wisden. I'll name drop him because he's like probably my favorite, like one of the most influential figures in my life. He's like a 5'6", very broad shoulder, athletic, like most athletic looking like 60-something-year-old you'll ever meet. And this guy, he was not only our acting student, but like our acting teacher, like that you would typically think is like a very like feminine, like dainty guy, but he like looked like a fucking tank. And he was hilarious, and he taught us how to be men. He never judged any kid. He didn't care what your sexual orientation was. He didn't care where you came from, what your race was. He loved every single student like it was his own kid, man. This guy like became like a second father to me, and I came into his office one day when Jack was just like on a tirade at me, and I sat in his office and I just cried. I was like, I don't know what to do. I remember him like being horrified, and he's like, I'm gonna tell people about this. I'm like, no, sir, like please don't tell anybody about this, please. I don't want to get him in trouble. I was so scared. I was like, I don't want to be that kid who rats on his teacher. I don't want to be that kid. So I made him promise not to tell anybody. And I remember Mr. Wisden just told me before I left his office, he was like, man, look, if you tell anybody about this, nobody's gonna think you're bad. He's like, we can make it anonymous. He's like, come back to me anytime about this. I was like, okay. And I just never did. I just dropped it. It got so bad that I took a trip with my friends, with my best friend at the time, to Mexico. And we stayed at his house in Mexico. And I remember one night we got like absolutely blasted drunk on the beach. And I was crying my eyes out, just like punching the sand, saying like, I fucking hate Jack. Like this guy's room, why does he hate me? And 2 years after that, I had to make the first like really big decision of my life. And that was to quit playing rugby and going on the tours to other countries and drop everything else in school to pursue becoming the world powerlifting champion. And I remember telling my coaches and okay, I'm gonna be honest, like I at this point I was kind of ass too. Like I told you, I couldn't tackle, very unathletic. But anyways, I was being in this team for so long. I was still always on the A team, and I dropped it all. And I was telling my coaches, and they were like, we're sad to see you go. You could have gotten better. We could have started training together, and you could have had potential. But like, they were so respectful about it, and they all like respected my decision that this was the purpose that I had in my life right now. And when I went up to Jack and I shook his hand, I remember him like squeezing my hand, like pulling me in, like staring at me, like kind of shaking his head and like letting go. And it just felt like, although I don't remember what he said, but it just felt like he was the father figure that just disproved of me, that if I was his son, he'd be embarrassed. And I went on the next month to win the Canadian National Powerlifting Championships. I went through fucking hell to get this victory. Fucking tore a disc in my spine and I still competed. And right after I won, I was back in my hotel room. My friend was videotaping and I just went on like 10 minutes, like screaming about how proud I was of myself and how much I hated Jack. Like, Jack can never do this. Like, I'm the man. He's not. And I was just letting out all this fucking anger, man. Like, all this pain after 5 years just never went away. And the only way that I got it out was through these like big victories. Years later, after I finished high school, I remember running into him at the grocery store. And this was just after I got dumped. This was just after I crashed that car in my dreams. And it was like one of the lowest mental health points of my life. And I remember seeing him and I was, for the first time, even though I was at one of the lowest points, I was just like so fucking proud of myself, of what I've become, of the man that I grew up to be, like all the success, the financial success, the success in just leveling up my mental health. Even though I was at one of the worst places, I saw him and I just shook his hand, asked him how life was doing, and we moved on. I thought about this so many times throughout my life of like, why did Jack bully me? Like, what did I do that made him hate me out of all the other students? And I think if I was in his shoes, I can't say for certain, but I think he was like reliving maybe a high school life that he didn't enjoy, that he didn't get through these experiences. Because like no fucking teacher like should have the audacity to like fucking joke with the students and make fun of other students. Like that is just the worst role model. That's the worst example, bro. But I think he saw me, especially because he started hating me ever since I lost weight, as a version of himself. A version of himself that was younger. A version of himself that had these like weaker, less masculine traits that maybe he wished he had. And whenever we resent people, the people that we resent the most are typically a mirror image of something about us that we resent in ourselves. For example, I really resent sensitive, feminine men. I've never been able to be friends with somebody who can see different points of situations and who are very balanced and are very sensitive and have guards and feelings. I can't. And I think that's because that's like the most base version of me. I am that very sensitive feminine guy, and with all these things that I layer on top on the exterior to like block that, because I'm not confident at that version of myself. And I think that's something that he was doing with me. That the minute I lost the weight, I wasn't like him anymore. I wasn't the punching bag of my school anymore. That now I was actually one of the most popular kids in the school. And that he saw this, I don't know what his childhood, this is all speculation, but he saw this kid who used to get bullied, and I think he remembered himself that he maybe got bullied through his entire life or something. I mean, like, why would you end up like fat as shit at 50? Honestly, for so long, I was so embarrassed by this, and I never told anybody because I was like, this is not that bad. There's other people in the world that's going through so much worse. Like, I can get through this. I can get through this. But now looking back, like shit like this is like not normal. There's a huge component of attachment wounds and childhood trauma that at your youngest years, your early stages of development, before your brain gets smart enough to interpret things and see the situation for truly what it is, having these like experiences put on you, like shit like this, it's not normal. It's not normal. It's not good to have a guardian, like a father figure, be your biggest bully. But what I will say is, if you are going through something like this, maybe it's not a teacher, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a best friend that makes you scared to be yourself every single day, just know that there are so many positives that will come from this. Like, without that hatred that I had from him, without that pain that I had, I wouldn't be making videos like this. That one kid watching this video that might be going through something similar wouldn't hear this. I wouldn't have become that national champion because I wouldn't have something to drive me. I wouldn't have had this subconscious like need to prove myself to be great and to be a better man. Be a man who doesn't shit on other people like that. And be great, and be the most popular, be the most funny guy in the school without shitting on people. I wouldn't have had that. So if you're going through something like this, just know that this experience is gonna make you stronger. But let's talk about how to get out of this experience too, because I don't think you need to stay in it. The best way to deal with getting bullied is to realize that this is all a test. This is a test on your masculine stoicism, on your spirit, on your frame. And it's not a test if you can handle it or you can take it. It's a test that these things can happen to you, and can you be unaffected by them and still give the other person the love and the appreciation that even though they might not deserve, that they need. You're hearing Damon like, why are you speaking like such a pussy, man? I'm speaking like this because if you are able to get relentlessly attacked over and over and over and be smart enough to understand why they might be doing it to you, like we were just talking about the pain that it might have in them or the resentment that they might have for themselves, and you're also able to come back at them with affection. You're able to come back at them with nothing but like gratitude for this happening to you and making you stronger, but also telling them and showing them that this trauma that they're causing you doesn't move your frame, that you're resilient toward it. That hatred, that resentment toward you will turn to respect. Think about all these figures that we have in our lives of like masculinity. It's all about respect. All the best fighters in the world, the ones that we actually respect, like Khabib, how the fuck do you say his last name, bro? But like think about Khabib, right? Like the most like stoic, disciplined man. Like after fights, he always thanks his father and he's able to have respect for his opponent. Like, but he's also a fucking killer. Those are the men that we look up to, and that's like the definition of the Giga Chad. Which brings me to the second point, becoming that monster, becoming that capable man. Maybe the bully on you is physically attacking you. Well, I'm sorry. Maybe nobody's gonna come fight your battle, so you need to go fight it yourself. If they're physically attacking you, it's your responsibility to go learn how to defend yourself. I'm sorry this happened to you, but now that the shit's happening, it's your responsibility to man the fuck up. And manning the fuck up doesn't mean you sit there and you just take it. It means you get strong enough that you can defend yourself. You're capable. If they're attacking you verbally and spiritually, you get so good at your discipline. You meditate. We meditate every day, boys. As I keep saying, meditation is basically is lifting weights for the brain. It's literally training your brain to be able to, when something disrupts you, something moves your masculine spirit, you're able to shift back to being present. You train that every single day, just 3 minutes a day. Breathe, just focus on that breath and nothing else. And every time your mind wanders, you bring it back to that breath and you train this. You train your gratitude. You wake up every morning and you write in the gratitude journals we always talk about. And maybe now you write that you're grateful you're getting bullied. You're grateful because somebody has so much pain that you're grateful that you can be the vessel that they let it out, and you can show them that you don't have to attack back. To become the ultimate Giga Chad version of ourselves, boys, we need to be the bigger men, because sometimes these bigger men can't be it. I just want to give you boys like my utmost gratitude for watching these videos. This channel makes no money. We're paying editors. We're losing money on this, losing time on this, but there's genuinely just such a purpose for me to bring you these videos. It soothes my soul. So if anything, you're helping me. So I just want to say thank you. I'd appreciate it if you comment about one of your experiences with bullying, so that like that one kid who's watching this video and who is going through this shit will read that and know that he's not alone. That is not just me, it's another dude in the comment section. If this video wasn't enough for you, I'm gonna put somewhere on the fucking screen another one probably about bullying for the YouTube retention. Be the bigger man. I love you, boys.